You met Rockefeller, how it happened in these discussions?
I met Rockefeller through a female attorney I knew who called me up one day and said, one of the Rockefellers would like to meet you. I had made a video called Mad as Hell, and he'd seen the video and wanted to meet me and knew I was running for governor of Nevada. So sure, I'd love to meet him. And I met him and I liked him, and he was a very, very smart man. And we used to talk and share ideas and thoughts. And he's the one who told me 11 months before 9/11 ever happened that there was going to be an event. Never told me what the event was going to be, but there was going to be an event, and out of that event, we were going to invade Afghanistan to run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We were going to invade Iraq, to take over the oil fields, establish a base in the Middle East, and make it all part of the New World Order. And we'd go after Chavez in Venezuela. And sure enough, later 9/11 happened, and I remember he was telling me how how you're going to see soldiers looking in caves for people in Afghanistan and Pakistan and all these places, and there's going to be this war on terror, which is no real enemy, and the whole thing is a giant hoax, but it's a way for the government to take over the American people.
He told you it was going to be a hoax.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's no question. He says, there's going to be war on terror, and he's just laughing. There's no who are we fighting? I mean, why do you think 9/11 happened, and then nothing's happened since then? Do you think that our security is so great here that these people who pulled off 9/11, who were able to, can't knock down another plane? Come on, it's ridiculous. 9/11 was done by people in our own government and our own banking system to perpetuate the fear of the American people into subordinating themselves to anything the government wants them to do. That's what it's about, and to create this war, this endless war on terror. And that's why and that was the first lie. And the next lie was going into Iraq, to get Saddam Hussein out with his weapons of mass destruction. That was the next lie.
Now, specifically, this was a little over 6 years ago?
This was
11 months before 9/11.
Yeah.
And Nick Rockefeller, who's a lawyer, he's become your friend over the previous years, and he's saying to you that there's going to be this big event, and then out of that we're going to have a war on terror, and it's just going to go on and on.
Right. An endless war on terror without any real enemy. That you can never define a winner.
And did he say that it's going to be perfect because you can't define an enemy? It just goes on and on?
Yeah, because you can't define a winner. There's no one to beat, so it goes on and on forever. And they can do whatever they want. They scare the hell out of the American public. Look, this whole war on terror is a fraud. It's a farce. It's very difficult to say it out loud because people are intimidated against saying it. Because if you say it, they want to make you into a nutcase. But the truth has to come out. That's why I'm doing this interview. The fact of the matter happens to be that the whole war on terror is a fraud. It's a farce. Yeah, there's a war going on in Iraq because we invaded Iraq. And people over there fighting, But the war on terror, that's a joke, And until we discover what really happened on 9/11 and who was responsible for 9/11, because that's where the war on terror emanates from. That's where it comes from. It was 9/11 that allowed this war on terror to begin. And until we get to the bottom root of 9/11, the truth of 9/11, we'll never know about the war on terror.
Aaron, you said that he was, and I think it's important, and I know this about the Rockefellers from Dr. Dennis Cuddy and many others, who literally, you'll be 20 years old in a lunch line at college, and no, there's David Rockefeller. And they're experts at recruiting and getting what they call players, and that clearly he was, I want to make it specific and just get you to reiterate what you said last night about you got 30% of the vote, you were having an effect, you made Mad as Hell, they knew that you'd started the Constitution Party, They knew that you were somebody who was taking action and getting things done, you'd already made some big films, had a lot of other successes,
right.
So they were trying to recruit you, and didn't it come down to the point of, hey, we are here to recruit you, and don't worry, your chip's going to say, don't mess with us, this guy's don't touch.
Yeah, yes, that did happen. I was definitely being recruited. But it's more subtle than that.
Well, in your words, just go through the process, and then what he said.
Well, what it is remember, we were friends, and we used to go to my house a lot. We'd have dinner, we'd talk, And he'd tell me about business investments that you get involved in, or they would help me with this business investment or that business investment. And was I interested in joining the Council on Foreign Relations? I would have to get a letter to join them, but was I interested in that? And, just stuff, leading you on. And I used to say to him that I never really did that because that wasn't where I was coming from. As much as I like you, Nick, your ways and my ways, we're on the opposite side of the fence. I don't believe in enslaving people, and
he would come back with, "Oh, I do." Or?
Well, it would be more like,
It's better for them.
Well, it's more like, how do I put it? It was like, what do you care about them? What do you care about those people? What difference does it make to you? Take care of your own life. Do the best you can for you and your family. What do the rest of the people mean to you? They don't mean anything to you. They're just serfs. They're just people. It was just a lack of caring, and that's just not who I was. It was just sort of like cold, it was just like cold, and I used to say to him, what's the point of all this? You have all the money in the world you need. You have all the power you need. What's the point? What's the end goal? And he said the end goal is to get everybody chipped, to control the whole society, to have the bankers, the elite people, the bankers and some governor controlling the world. And I said, all the people in the Council on Foreign Relations believe this way you do? He said, no. Most of them believe they're doing the right thing. A lot of them believe it's better off being socialistic. We have to convince people that socialism is really capitalism. Because America's becoming a socialist country. It's a communist country today. Well, one of the things they told me was that he was at the house one night, and he would talk, and he started laughing. He said, "Aaron, what do you think women's liberation was about?" And I said, I had pretty conventional thinking about it at that point. I said, I think it's about women having the right to work, getting equal pay with men, just like they won the right to vote, And he started to laugh. He said, "You're an idiot." And I said, "Why am I an idiot?" He said, let me tell you what that was about. We, the Rockefellers, funded that. We funded Women's Lib, And we're the ones who got all over the newspapers and television, the Rockefeller Foundation. He says, and you want to know why? He says, there were two primary reasons. And one reason was we couldn't tax half the population before Women's Lib. And the second reason was, now we get the kids in school at an early age. We can indoctrinate the kids how to think. Because it breaks up their family. The kids start looking at the state as the family, as the school, as the officials, as their family, not as the parents teaching them. And so those are the two primary reasons for Women's Lib, which I thought up to that point was a noble thing. When I saw their intentions behind it, where they were coming from when they created it, the thought of it, I saw the evil behind what I thought was a noble venture.
Aaron, did you know that Gloria Steinem, in one of her own books, now admits the CIA funded Ms. Magazine?
No, I had no idea about that. No, I never heard that.
Yeah, we're going to...
CIA funded Ms. Magazine?
Funded Ms. Magazine with the stated goal of taxing women and breaking up the family.
No kidding. I never heard that. Well, Nick told me. I mean, I know it, but not because I know the CIA was involved in it.
Well, Gloria Steinem was proud of it. Oh, the CIA wanted to help women.
My friendship with Nick Rockefeller was one where we expressed ideas to each other and thoughts and philosophies, and he wanted me to become part of what they were doing, and for me to become a member of the CFR, and offered various business opportunities for me to get involved in, and for me to not take up the fight or the battle that I've been taking up in the past, to drop that idea, because what was the point of my fighting for the people? I was a guy who was very successful in the movie business, and I saw the truth of what was happening. I tried to express it to the people, and rather than having me express it to the people, they wanted me to join their side because I was a mover and a shaker, and rather than me opposing them, to join them. It was real simple, and he tried to recruit me into that situation, and I didn't go for it.
Did he get angry when you didn't go for it?
No. And, it's like, I remember one time he said to me, "You join us so you have an ID card, Aaron, you have a chip, and your chip will say KMA on it. And I said, what does KMA mean? He said, it means kiss my ass. And anybody stops you, a cop or whatever, and you show them your card or your chip, and they'll know to leave you alone because you're one of us. You know, and why are you fighting for the people for? What is that about? The people are just, they have to be ruled. They have to be, the Constitution, what you're standing for, is only for a few people. It's only a few individuals that can live that way. And we believe that it's best for society to be ruled by an elite people who control everything. And I said, I don't believe that. I believe God put me on this earth to be the best person I could be, and put everybody on this earth to be the best they can be, not to be a slave and a sheep to you and these people. And I don't understand why you want to control everything. What is the need for that? And I asked them, do all the people in the Council of Foreign Relations feel the same way you feel? He said, no, a lot of them think they're doing the right thing. They think that socialism is the best way to go. They think that, that they're doing the right thing. But the people at the top, they all know the truth of what's happening. And that's what it is.
So it's compartmentalized within the elite structure as well.
Of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, all the people that are in the CFR, was that 2,000-3,000 people have to go to, like Dan Rather. They don't know what's going on. They join the CFR because it's prestigious. They think it's good for business, it's good for this. They don't know what's really happening. The evil that comes out of it, that's emanating out of it. And to me, the biggest evil is what's happening right now, because what happened on 9/11 is a phony, and we've never learned the truth about 9/11.
That's the question I wanted to follow up on. He tells you 11 months before there's going to be an event, all this is going to happen. What did you think on the morning of 9/11? Where were you, and did you think about Nick Rockefeller and what he had told you when you saw those towers fall?
No, I was actually in Tahiti when 9/11 happened, and I got a call from my son. And my son said, the Twin Towers, they were just attacked, and they were falling down or something. So what are you talking? I was in Tahiti, I was asleep. And he says, yeah, they were hit by a plane, da-da-da-da. And so where I lived, where I was in Tahiti, there was no television, so I had to run around the other side of the island to a hotel where they had, and it was all on television, and that's when I first saw the stuff on TV about it. And I didn't immediately equate it to Nick, but when I realized that we're going to go into Afghanistan, Iraq, and as that developed, I realized what it was.
Well, I have to say, I am so pleased to be here. I have waited 10 years to tell this story. I remember after 9/11 when my CIA handler, Richard Fuse, told me that there really wasn't going to be much of a 9/11 investigation. And we were going to try to keep the people calm. That's what he said. We're going to keep them calm. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we don't really need them to know everything that we were doing before 9/11. And I said, well, why? What do you think is going to happen when they find out that you didn't tell them the truth? Why don't you just tell them the truth right now? And he said, well, that's not really what they want to do. So I had different ideas. I will tell you straight off the bat that right after 9/11, my CIA handler received a $13 million payoff from the 9/11 investigation that was supposed to be money used for the Iraqi, to secure Iraq's cooperation. And I ended up getting indicted on the Patriot Act. I was the second non-Arab American ever indicted on the Patriot Act after Jose Padilla. And my crime was in opposing terrorism and going to Congress, and I had spoken to the staff of Senator John McCain and Senator Trent Lott, and I had pounded them. I called their chiefs of staff, their legislative directors, and their foreign policy people, and I said, I'm an asset who covered Iraq and Libya at the United Nations, and I have a story to tell, and you need to hear what I have to say. And within 30 days, I am not making this up, this is actually, thanks to the Patriot Act, All of my phone calls to these offices are taped by the FBI, so I can actually prove that they occurred. And I have the dates, I have the actual phone conversations on tape. And within 30 days of those conversations, I woke up to hear the FBI pounding at my door, and I got up out of bed and I looked out the window, and there are men in flak jackets in my porch. And I open the door, and they come into my house, and they're like, Ms. Susan, and the FBI agent is shaking. He's shaking. And he said, you are Susan Lindauer. You are hereby notified. You are under arrest on the Patriot Act. And I said, what? You have the right to remain silent, anything you say, et cetera, et cetera. He read me my Miranda rights, and I was just like, what are you talking about? I'm making coffee. You know, I'm not a bank robber. I'm not a drug dealer. I'm not a murderer. I haven't broken any laws that I can think of, and I have no idea what you say that I've done. He said, well, your attorney will explain it to you later on. Okay? Okay. That began a 5-year indictment, 5-year nightmare on the Patriot Act. I was never taken to trial. In 5 years, I was allowed 1 morning of testimony with 2 witnesses. The 2 witnesses were a former chief of staff for a congressional member of Congress, and my old friend Park Godfrey, who verified the 9/11 warnings that I'm going to talk about tonight. And I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to let you guys ask a lot of questions, and I know you're going to have a lot of questions. I'm going to do my best to answer as honestly as I can. I do not have all the answers, but I will tell you up front that I believe there was both the hijackings, and that does not mean that I'm right and you're wrong. I believe there were both hijackings and a controlled demolition scenario, and I'll explain to you how the whole thing fits together. And you may disagree, and that's okay if you disagree with me. But I can tell you, but when you hear what I have to say, you'll understand why I've reached this conclusion. So I believe both of them happened, okay? And it's also very important for you to know that as the 10-year anniversary of 9/11 comes up, no offense, but you guys have no idea what actually happened. This is like the lies are so much bigger than what you know. And it's so much deeper, and it's so much more tragic once you have the truth. So on that note, let me just take you to, I'm actually going to start, I'm going to move you a little bit ahead to remember when George Bush they were counting the votes in Florida. Okay? I'm going to take you back to November of 2000. They had not yet declared that George Bush had won the election. I was having meetings with the full knowledge and permission of the CIA with Iraq's ambassador to the United Nations on resuming the weapons inspections. It is very important for you to understand that this story with the 9/11 also ties in deeply to what happened with Iraq. And contrary to everything you were told, the Iraqis were not resistant to weapons inspections. They had a comprehensive agenda. The CIA had already a comprehensive agenda for resolving the entire conflict without war at all. And it involved weapons inspections, cooperation with anti-terrorism, and major financial contracts for U.S. corporations, and oil. And this would be developed over a period of time. But we already had, by November of 2000, we already had an agreement with the Iraqi government. We had a framework agreement that was, at that point, it was undefined, not so well defined, and we had to make it defined. But they had already consented to all of these things. They wanted peace with us. And so by February of 2001, the Iraqis had agreed to invite the FBI to send a task force into Baghdad with authorization to conduct terrorism investigations and to make arrests of terror suspects. This is very important for you to understand. So this is like the background of what you have to know. Okay. In April of 2001, I was summoned to my, this is already happening. The Comprehensive Peace Framework, those discussions are already underway. And I am, at this point, the chief asset covering the Iraqi embassy and the Libya house, both of them, I do both of them, and Yemen and Syria and Egypt and Malaysia. But Iraq and Libya are my primary countries. And so I'm a back channel, which means that the U.S. government gives me messages to give the Iraqis, and then the Iraqis give me messages to give to Washington. So I know everything. Every single conversation is going through me. And I can tell you that in April of 2001, I was summoned to my CIA handler, Dr. Richard Fuse, and he said he had a message for me to deliver to New York at the earliest possible convenience. And the message was this: we are looking for information on a conspiracy to hijack airplanes. We expect the target to be the World Trade Center. We think they're going to fly the airplanes into the World Trade Center. And we want the Iraqis to provide it's called actionable intelligence. Actionable intelligence is a name, an airport hub, a flight number, something that's going to help us identify who they are, where they're meeting, what their nationalities are, anything like this. And he says, he gives me a message, and he says, we want this information, and I want you to tell the Iraqis that if they fail to give us this information, and if it is later determined that they knew the information and they did not give it to us, then the United States is prepared to go to war with Iraq. Okay, this is April of 2001. Well, I went up to New York, and we were in the middle of these great negotiations. We already had an invitation. From February of 2001, we had an invitation for the FBI to come to Baghdad. So I go up to New York. I'm very pleasant. I'm very polite. There's no reason to be nasty with these people. They want peace. I say, hey, could you please send a message to Baghdad? We'd like this information. If you come across anything, Saddam had been one of our best sources on terrorism throughout the 1990s. Iraq hated terrorism because they believed that they hated Islamic jihadis. He did. Whether you like Saddam or not, whether you hate Saddam or not, he hated Islamic conservatives. He was convinced that they would take advantage of the crumbling of authority in Baghdad under the sanctions, and that they would then try to overturn his government, and the poverty of the people from the sanctions would fuel this problem, would help overturn his government. So he wanted to help us at every turn keep these people from becoming too powerful. Okay. And so we knew this. So when I go to New York in April of 2001, I'm very friendly. And I say, hey, look, could you send the message to Baghdad? Let them know we're looking for this. Thanks. And the message from the Iraqis in April of 2001 is, hey, send the FBI. We've already agreed to send we've already invited you to send the FBI. Come on. Tell them, just bring them on. Sure. Wow. You didn't know that, did you? Okay. So I go back to Washington, and I get a phone call from Richard. He said, come down to my office. I want to hear what they said. I go down, I said, oh, I was real polite. Yeah, I gave them the message, sure. He said, I didn't tell you to be nice. I told you to tell those, this is going to be on television, right? This is going to be like, okay, well, I'll soft pedal what he said. He was like, you go back to, you stupid goddamn blankety. I told you to tell those SOB MFers, God, GD, blah, 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 screaming, circling me around his conference. I'll never forget it. Circling his conference desk, ranting and raving, waving his arms around. He didn't do that very often. He does not have that kind of personality. He's a very calm man, and he feels that if you're really angry at somebody, then the more calm you are, the more dangerous you are. That's CIA. He's old school CIA. Okay, so he's screaming now. And I go back, he's like, you go back to New York and you deliver the message exactly the way that I told you to deliver the message. And I said, well, Richard, I don't want them to think I'm threatening them because, I believe in negotiations and conflict resolution. He said, no, I don't want them to think you are threatening them. And he said, I don't want them to think I am threatening them. I want you to tell them This threat of war originates at the highest level of government, above the CIA director and above the Secretary of State. That it would be three men: President George Bush, Vice President Dick Cheney, and Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, and no one else. Those are the three people who are threatening war. And I want to be really clear about the message that I was ordered to give them. We demand that you turn over any actionable, any fragment of intelligence outlining a conspiracy involving airplane hijackings and a strike on the World Trade Center. If you withhold this information, if we discover that you have withheld this information and the attack occurs, then we will bomb you back to the Stone Age. You will be bombed harder than you've ever been bombed before. You will be destroyed. You've never been hit the way we're going to hit you now. Okay, so I went up and I delivered that message. This is May of 2001. In June and July, practically every single week, my CIA handler, Dr. Richard Fuse, and I talked about 9/11. And it was very clear that the intelligence community was being prepped for two things. One, to expect airplane hijackings. Now, I have to be honest with you, because I know a lot of you are interested in the controlled demolition. They prepped us to expect the airplane hijackings. They told us about it. Like my CIA handler demanded that Iraq had to give us this, and they insisted that if it happened, there would be dire consequences. Now, what you're going to see in my book, and we have more copies of my book outside. We've got more here too. There was something else going on that summer that was really beautiful. This peace framework that we had been working on was magnificent. It was turning out just glorious for a peace dividend. The Iraqis were now offering the weapons inspections, which of course the United States had very rigorous standards for the weapons inspections. Iraq was offering cooperation with anti-terrorism to allow the FBI to go in. And Iraq started to offer a lot more. A lot more came on the table. By June and July of 2001, Iraq was offering the United States preferential contracts. Now think about the economy today. Preferential contracts for the United States corporations on telecommunications, healthcare, hospital equipment, pharmaceuticals, transportation. Iraq offered to buy 1 million American manufactured automobiles every year for 10 years. Think of what that would have done to the economy. Think about non-dual use factory production. And all of this was because the CIA was like, you know, if we're going to give up these darn sanctions, we're going to take a pound of flesh with it. They had no, and whether you like the CIA or not, and most of you, 99% of you don't like the CIA, I realize that, of course. But the CIA was doing what it's supposed to do, whether you like it or not. They were taking care of what is in the best interest of the United States government, with the best interest of the United States economy, and they were not going to let Iraq punish the United States. And I hated the sanctions. I was doing this because I hated the sanctions. I was doing it because I thought they had destroyed education. They wiped out literacy in a single generation. They destroyed the hospitals and the healthcare system. Iraq performed the second heart transplant in the world, and we wiped them out. Okay? 11,000 people died every month. By the end of 1996, 500,000 children had died of sanctions, and they only counted 5-year-olds and younger. They didn't even count the 6-year-olds because the United Nations was holding back the numbers. And after that report in December of 96, they stopped counting it. The United Nations never published another report on the deaths. So frequently what you will hear is that only 500,000 children died, but in fact they continued to die, and approximately 1 million children died. They were babies. They weren't even alive when the first Gulf War happened. This was an offense against, this is genocide. This is a mass genocide. So that's my motivation. But the CIA did not have my motivation. They were out to make sure that the United States was not going to be punished for what they had done. And I was like, and believe me, by this point, we just wanted to get rid of the sanctions. The Iraqis were like, if they'll get rid of the sanctions, you bet. We'll give them anything they want. So before 9/11, you could have had every single thing you possibly could dream of. And if the CIA could have thought of more to ask for, we would have. We would have asked for, it was shameless. Okay, so you have peace that's breaking out in the Middle East. You have the 9/11 warnings. And then in August of 2001, we went into high activity mode. I can tell you the exact day, on August 2nd, and after I tell you this, I'll open it up to questions. On August 2nd was the Senate nomination hearings for Robert Mueller to head the FBI. He was going to be the FBI director. And I was on the phone with my CIA handler, Richard Fuse, and I said, there's not one single terrorism investigation this man hasn't thrown. Oops. That's okay. He threw the Oklahoma City bombing investigation. He threw Lockerbie. And I said, this man should not be the FBI director when this next attack occurs. And Richard Fuse said to me, my God, what if there is no FBI director when this happens? I said, do you think it's that soon? Do you think the attack is imminent? He said, oh yeah. He said, it's absolutely just in the next couple of weeks. He said, I don't want, and I said, well, God, Richard, I'll go back to New York right now, and I'll pump the Iraqis and see if they've got anything from Baghdad. I'll see if they have any news for us. And he said, oh my God, Susan, do not go back to New York City. It's too dangerous. We are expecting the use of a miniature thermonuclear device. And they were not afraid that I was going to be hurt by falling debris in the World Trade Center. I wasn't going to be at the World Trade Center. They were afraid of radiation contamination, like the winds blowing the radioactive stuff. And that's what he was like, don't go up there. We're expecting mass casualties. And I said, well, Richard, I'll go up the day after. I can tell you the exact day. It was a Thursday. And I said, I will go up to New York on Saturday, and I'll report to you on Monday, and we'll just find out if the Iraqis have anything to give us. I went up to New York. The Iraqis said, ain't got nothing. We don't know. We don't know anything about this. You keep telling us about this. The only way we know about it is because you're talking about it. But we don't have any information to give you. And if we did, we understand the consequences. We know that if we don't help you, you're going to go to war with us if you think we did. And if there was anything we could give you, we would do it. So I go back and I report that on August 6th. On August 6th, there is a memo to the President telling him that this is a high security threat, that it is an emergency level, that it's imminent. Okay. At my meeting with Richard Fuse does something very important. He tells me that because of my direct contacts with Iraq and Libya, I should be the one. I am perfectly positioned, because everyone likes to think that Iraq and Libya are involved in terrorism to begin with. I should be the one to contact U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft's office. And I should tell them that we're looking for what's called an emergency broadcast alert across all agencies, seeking any fragment of intelligence involving airplane hijackings and a strike on the World Trade Center identified specifically. And I make that phone call. My conversation with Richard Fuse is August 6th. Probably August 7th, August 8th, I call them. And immediately I talk to I have a private phone number. See, you guys couldn't get this number, but I have it, okay? I have the number inside the Attorney General's office. I'm not calling a switchboard. I'm calling his private staff, okay? I'm calling his government liaison office. No, that's not true. I call his private internal office. There are about 20 members of his private staff. His legislative director is there. His government relations person is there. But I call inside that office. And they give me the phone number for the Office of Counterterrorism. They say, repeat exactly what you just told us and tell them. I am told that John Ashcroft said, oh, those CIA people keep talking about terrorism, and they keep talking about this darn airplane hijacking, and they're so paranoid, and why do they keep bugging us about it? That's what I'm told they said. But I did what I did. And when I did that, I apparently tripped some wires, because it denied the White House, it denied the Justice Department and the Attorney General's office of deniability, plausible deniability. And that's very important. And that is why they came after me so hard and tried to destroy me utterly, because they could not admit to you that we had absolutely anticipated this thing. We knew it was going to happen exactly as it did go down, with one exception. And here's where and then I'm going to finish this, and then I'll open the floor to questions. What I have learned since then, now all the things that I've told you were things I did directly. So I'm telling you, I'm not relating what somebody else did or a conversation that somebody else had that has been reported to me. This is direct primary knowledge from my own experience. But what I'm going to tell you now is from somebody else, okay? And so I distinguish these two things. I have been told that by somebody who saw the videos that at the World Trade Center on from approximately August 23rd, and it could have been August 22nd, it could have been August 24th. Okay, approximately August 23rd until approximately September 3rd. And again, it could be September 2nd. The spooks can be weird about this stuff. Okay, they could say, well, it wasn't September 4th. So no. No, it could have been September 3rd, okay? It could have been September 2nd. Right within a couple of days of this, my friend says that at approximately 3 o'clock in the morning, strange vans, and there were just maybe 3 of them, he said, that not just a couple. The way he put it was a couple of vans. So we're thinking 3, possibly 4, but most likely 3. A couple of vans arrived at 3 o'clock in the morning after the janitorial trucks had left the building. And it's very important because they were able to identify the vans according to make, model, color, and there were no markings on the vans. But the janitorial vans did have markings. And so they were able to distinguish that these are not the same vans. And they know how the janitorial trucks left the building, and they actually tracked the paths that the janitorial trucks took to drive home. Like the janitorial workers were driving down certain roads to get over to their houses, and the CIA, the FBI, the NSA folks tracked those people home. And he was quite convinced that these are not the same trucks. And between the hours of 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock, these trucks had never been in this building before. It was an anomaly. Definitely, it wasn't like it was going on for months and months and it just continued. They showed up for 10 days, 10 or 11 days approximately, then they were never seen again. And that's when they believe they wired the building. And they do believe, and my friend told me absolutely it was a thermite bomb. A thermite bomb with, it was a thermite bomb with potential sulfur in it. The sulfur makes it, the important thing about a thermite bomb is it is an extraordinary heat-reducing bomb. Okay, it takes steel and it creates molten steel. So it takes beams of steel and it turns it into molten steel, and it just everything underneath just sinks into the ground like what you saw. And it is a special U.S. military-grade weapon. Okay, it is a military-grade weapon. It's not something you could make ever in your kitchen or your garage or your living room. It is impossible for you to do this. This is a U.S. military weapon. And so I do believe that helps to explain some of the missing pieces. And I believe this is what happened. They'd known about the terrorist attack for months. There is a long-term advanced knowledge. Assets are being watched. The so-called terrorists, whether you want to think of them as whether they're real, Mohammed Atta was an asset trained by the United States government, supervised by the United States government. And I can assure you that assets, and I'm speaking directly from my own personal experience, assets are heavily controlled individuals. I was never dealing with Iraq and Libya without somebody paying extremely close attention to me at every stage, and my phones were tapped. I mean, at some point they had wired my house. When they had the handover of the 2 Libyan men, I went down to my basement the same day that they handed over the men, and my ceiling of my basement had been torn out, and there were cable wires dangling from the ceiling. about a dozen cable wires. And I had a contractor come over to my house and he said, wow, somebody really put a kick-ass stereo system in your house. That's amazing. He said, you have these wires going to every single room of your house, even in your bathroom. And I was like, ew. You know, but yeah, but he was like, he said it's everywhere. He said, you must have like a stereo system that just, you know, rocks in this house. So anyway, but the point is that assets, there's no way that these assets could have functioned without everyone knowing every single detail of what they were doing. There's no way they could have hidden. They could not have disguised their actions from their handlers. Even if they tried to disguise it, it wouldn't work. Believe me, it wouldn't work. No, it's impossible. Impossible. And so it's more likely that they were using Mohammed Atta to guide the conspiracy, to track the conspiracy, and then they discovered that they were bozo pilots, they were clowns, they weren't any good at this flying stuff, and now they had an agenda. And the agenda was that when this attack happened, they were going to go to war with Iraq. But, oh gosh, we've got a problem now. Because the problem is they're not going to be able to do the job. Uh-oh. Oh, what a bummer. We're not going to be able, see, here's the thing about all, and I'm speaking now, again, from experience. The 1993 World Trade Center attack killed 5 people. The bombing of the USS Cole killed 12 people. And once the smoke clears and the catastrophe, the chaos is over, and the noise is done, it's pretty, you know, it's like, it's all, there's not a lot of damage that would certainly not enough that would allow a government, a pro-war cabal, to throw itself into a new war with Iraq, which they wanted to do. They've already decided to do it. And so that is the motivation. The thing is, there can never be any police officer will tell you, there is no crime without a motive and opportunity. And we had both. So it's not like they just spontaneously wired the World Trade Center. They knew it was coming, and they wanted to make sure that they had maximum damage when it hit. They knew they were going to use the airplanes as the cover to demolish the building. So it's not, you know, a lot of people in the 9/11 truth community have gotten kind of, at first, when I first broke this news, they were like, you know, a lot of people attacked me, and they said, you're saying there were airplane hijackings. No, no, there was a demolition. And I'm like saying, no, no, there's both of it. Both things happened. They knew this. They knew the airplanes were going to be hijacked, so they used it as a cover for to guarantee maximum destruction because they already knew the consequence of war. So
what happened at 9/11 is we didn't have a strategy, we didn't have bipartisan agreement, we didn't have American understanding of it, and we had instead a policy coup in this country. A coup. A policy coup. Some hard-nosed people took over the direction of American policy, and they never bothered to inform the rest of us. I went through the Pentagon 10 days after 9/11. I couldn't stay away from Mother Army. I went back there to see Don Rumsfeld. I'd worked for him as a White House fellow in the 1970s. All this is in the book. And I said, am I doing okay on CNN? He said, yeah, fine. He said, I'm thinking about it. He says, I read your book, and he said, this is a book that talks about the Kosovo campaign. And he said, I just want to tell you, he said, nobody's going to tell us where or when we can bomb. Nobody. He said, I'm thinking of calling this a floating coalition. What do you think about that? I said, well, sir, thanks for reading my book. And, he said, thanks, that's all the time I've got. Really. And I went downstairs. I was leaving the Pentagon, and an officer from the Joint Staff called me into his office and said, I want you to know, he said, sir, we're going to attack Iraq. And I said, why? He said, we don't know. He said, I said, well, did they tie Saddam to 9/11? He said, no. And then I came back to the Pentagon about 6 weeks later. I saw the same officer. I said, why haven't we attacked Iraq? We still going to attack Iraq? He said, oh, sir. He says, it's worse than that. He said, he pulled up a piece of paper off his desk. He said, I just got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office that says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. I said, 7 countries in 5 years. I said, is that a classified memo? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, don't show it to me. He was about to show it to me. He said, because I want to talk about it. And I sat on this information for a long time, for about 6 or 8 months. I was so stunned by this, I couldn't begin to talk about it. And I couldn't believe it would really be true, but that's actually what happened. These people took control of the policy in the United States. And I realized then, it came back to me, a 1991 meeting I had with Paul Wolfowitz. You know, in 2001 he was Deputy Secretary of Defense, but in 1991 he was the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. It's the number 3 position in the Pentagon. He said, and we've got about 5 or 10 years to clean up those old Soviet client regimes, Syria, Iran, Iraq, before the next great superpower comes on to challenge us. It was a pretty stunning thing. You mean the purpose of the military is to start wars and change governments? It's not to sort of deter conflict? We're going to invade countries? And you know, my mind was spinning. And I put that aside. It was like a nugget that you hold on to. This country was taken over by a group of people with a policy coup. Wolfowitz and Cheney and Rumsfeld, and you could name a half-dozen other collaborators from the Project for a New American Century. They wanted us to destabilize the Middle East, turn it upside down, make it under our control. It went back to those comments in 1991. Now, did anybody ever tell you that? Was there a national dialogue on this? Did senators and congressmen stand up and denounce this plan? Was there a full-fledged American debate on it? Absolutely not. And there still isn't. They could hardly wait to finish Iraq so they could move into Syria. It was like a laydown. Oh, our legions are going to go in there. This wasn't what the American people voted George Bush into office. Well, they didn't actually vote him into office, but it wasn't what many of the people who... It wasn't what he campaigned on. He campaigned on a humble foreign policy, the most arrogant foreign policy in American history. He campaigned on no peacekeeping, no nation building, and here he is with Afghanistan and Iraq. It's astonishing. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, if you're an American, you ought to be concerned about the strategy of the United States in this region. What is our aim? What is our purpose? Why are we there? Why are Americans dying in this region? That is the issue.
Mr. President, I do want to get right to the news of this week.
Sure.
The terrorism in Boston.
Yeah.
Many people have wondered if it took you right back to 9/11 when you heard it.
Well, at first, you know, I was deeply concerned that there might have been a organized plot. I don't know all the facts. I don't think we all know all the facts, but I was deeply concerned that this could have been you know, another organized, highly organized attack on the country. And it still may be. Again, I don't know the facts, but I do know that it's really hard to protect the homeland.
Il n'y a que des innocents ici. Il n'y a pas de base militaire. Que cherchent les Américains en Afghanistan? La cachette d'Oussama Ben Laden? Il n'est pas ici. Pourquoi nous a-t-on bombardés?
Environ 200 personnes ici sont mortes. L'Amérique nous demande de livrer Ben Laden, mais vous savez, en Afghanistan, nous sommes tous Oussama Ben Laden.